ekirala nti badde kozesebwa nnyo ennyonyi za America ziri eya tankers eziwa zinaaza amafuta mu bbanga. Tulinze tulabe ekigenda okuva wano oba tutegedde nti beesi eno bagikubye bubi nnyo. Yes, okusinza ku mawulire agaliwo beesi ekubiddwa bubi nnyo. Prince Sultan eya beesi Saudi
ago mawulire ge gamu agava eyo. So njagala nkutwaleko wano ku Al Jazeera obeere ng'ate otegeera embeera efa mu kitwandiise mu lutalo luno. Sagala ate
have fired at least what appears to be one missile towards Israel.
So this is Al Jazeera.
Well, I mean, it looks to me like the Houthis are entering the war, and that is very significant. We've seen over the past 2.5 years that the Houthis do have significant power, and if they decide to move to shut down the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, and thereby shutting down access to the Red Sea and ultimately the Suez Canal, then we'd have two major choke points right now with the Strait of Hormuz and the Suez Canal. These are major global shipping routes, so shipping waterways, essential for international trade. And so I think it can be very significant from that standpoint. We also have to remember that Israel has a very strong air defense, Arrow and David's sling and the Iron Dome, but they are not impenetrable. Hezbollah missiles, rockets, and also Iranian missiles have been able to penetrate in recent weeks. If Israel is now forced to defend against missiles coming from Yemen, that would make things significantly more complicated from them. On the other hand, politically, and maybe paradoxically, Israel may welcome this because they want to expand the war. They want to extend the war. They want to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't take an exit ramp in the near future. Their goals have not, the Israeli goals have not been met. So politically, they may actually think that this is a good thing, the Netanyahu government.
I want to bring in Nida Ibrahim. She's live for us from Ramallah. Nida, you were hearing, obviously, what we were just talking about with regard to the statement that came out from the Houthis. We heard also from Yusuf Mauri, our correspondent in Sana'a earlier, saying that if this missile at that time had come from Yemen, at that time it hadn't been confirmed, it was likely to have been a hypersonic missile, and that is a missile that can evade some of Israel's defenses. This is opening up a serious third front, isn't it, for Israel?
Indeed, Israel has already been fighting on two fronts, Hezbollah and Iran, and that has been raising questions in Israel, about the viability of the operations, about the way the government is conducting its war there. But now we have a third front, and we are expecting Israel to retaliate. They're going to, no doubt, reply and retaliate for this attack on Yemen, as we've seen them do time and again since Yemen joined the battle during the war on Gaza as a way to support the Palestinians, as a way to put pressure on Israel. Of course, Israeli military officials would like to keep portraying this image of power that Israel has, that the U.S. is backing it on its wars, that it has the eyes and ears of Donald Trump, so they feel empowered. Although behind closed doors, they do not hide the worry, the tension, the concern that Trump might be heading towards a deal that could end this war and de-escalate the region. This is something that the Israelis said they were not ready to do just yet. They wanted to strike more targets inside Iran. They wanted to disarm Hezbollah, and they want to continue retaliating, as what they say, in a way to diminish the threats that are facing the Israelis. But at the same time, you are talking about a community that had been in and out of shelters for 1 month. The economy has been disrupted. The normal life is no longer normal. The flights from Ben Gurion have been disrupted as a result of the continued missiles being launched from Iran. And now we're talking about Yemen. Well, the Israeli forces did not specify the type of missile that had been fired from Yemen Israeli territory. We know that the direction of these missiles hitting the southern area of Israel carries a significance. This is an area that has a nuclear facility, that has an educational also institute to teach about scientific, about nuclear studies. So all of these things are seen in light of the hits that Israel is continuing to do on nuclear facilities in Iran, that the Israelis are going to also face retaliation, are also going to face hits to their nuclear facilities at home. Again, they try and keep portraying this image of power and success, but a third front will no doubt put additional pressure on an already strained situation. When we say that, we should always remind ourselves that the Israeli community, the Israeli society is a highly militarized one. So the support for this war is very high. The polls put it at 80%. But again, the debate in Israel, the argument in Israel is whether Netanyahu and his government are conducting this war at the best practice they should and they could do.
Nida, for now, thank you very much indeed. I want to go to Zain Basrawi, who's been standing by for us in Dubai. This is going to be a great concern, I would imagine, to the states within the Gulf, because on two fronts. First of all, there are going to be possibly missiles that are going to be flying over some of those states and from Yemen, should it choose then to carry out more attacks on Israel. At the same time, of course, we've seen the action that the Houthis have taken in the past against shipping, and particularly in the Bab al-Mandab Strait, as Mohammed was just describing to us earlier. So one would imagine that the Gulf states are going to be watching this very closely.
That is correct. The first thing that comes to mind when you think of the Houthis joining the fight are those dramatic pictures that we saw of airborne soldiers, a helicopter landing on a ship and taking control of it, because they said they were doing so in support of the people of Gaza. They were doing so in support of stopping and blocking shipping lanes of those that supported the genocide there. So a very dramatic footage there showing their military footprint, their military capability. And it's not just on the coastal waters. Geographically, where Yemen is placed, where the Houthis have influence, it creates a great deal of potential disruption in those waterways, not just the Strait of Hormuz, but it expands the conflict to potentially other places. But the Houthis have in the past had conflagrations with GCC countries. In 2015, when Saudi Arabia and a coalition of 8 other countries, including the UAE, joined effectively the Yemeni civil war to try to install a government that they found friendly to them. It led to years of bombardment of Yemen, but also a massive with Houthi soldiers that cost the UAE and Saudi Arabia blood and treasure. It was not an easy conflict. That was put to rest, but it risks that coming up again. And this may well be a red line specifically for Saudi Arabia, that does not want to have another conflict or any sort of tension on its southern border, certainly not on the border with Yemen. And the Houthis potentially entering the fray now does once again show that the longer this conflict goes on, the more expansive it gets, the more complex it gets. Now, we don't know exactly what role the Houthis will play, but we've seen what has happened throughout the course of the war in Gaza. They launched multiple times at Israel, successfully hitting the airport and other targets. So it does certainly create another capacity for Iran and its ally in this case to be able to create a pressure point on Israel. We've also seen similarly there were drones launched during that conflict, during the civil war in Yemen, after the Saudi Arabia and UAE and that coalition joined up. The Houthis took pot shots at the Abu Dhabi airport, at the Dubai airport. Nothing at the scale we've seen since Iran started its retaliatory strikes, but it was still a serious breach of security for these GCC countries. And if the Houthis are going to continue to carry out strikes, there is very little doubt that there will be pressure brought to bear on GCC countries to then address this problem as well. They may be forced to once again deal with another front opening up, another front line being brought to their doorstep in a war that they didn't want.
Zain, for now, thank you very much indeed. That's Zain Basrawi who's been talking to us from Dubai. We can go back to Sanaa and Yusuf Mari. So we've had the statement now from the Houthi spokesman. their operations will continue until their goals are reached. Do we have any?
Going to basically destroy their ability to make missiles and drones in their factories, and going to substantially, dramatically reduce the number of missile launches so that they cannot hide behind these things to build a nuclear weapon threat to the world. As the Department of War has consistently outlined, we are on or ahead of schedule in that operation.
They built this great military. I said, you'll never have to use it, but sometimes you have to use it. And Cuba's next, by the way, but pretend I didn't say that. Pretend I didn't say that. Please, 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 media, please disregard that statement. Thank you very much.
एक तरफ हम अपने कौमी मफादात के तहफ़्फ़ुज़ और अवाम को आलमी मंडियों में तेल की कीमतों में खेज़ इजाफे से बचाने की भरपूर कोशिश कर रहे हैं, तो दूसरी जानिब मुहाज पर अमन के क़याम के लिए दिन रात मुतहरिक हैं। इस जंग को रुकवाने के लिए पाकिस्तान सफारती सतह पर साज़िशी की भरपूर और पुरखुलूस कोशिशें कर रहा है ताकि खित्ता और बरादर इस्लामी